Hey, welcome to Radicalized, where truth survives, and we got your back. I'm Heidi Cuda. I'm here with Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity, Sean Connor. I am here with my co-hosts who are true warriors in the disinformation battlefield. How serious are they? Well, Sean has COVID, as you can see, because of the germs that are germinating on the screen right there. He is such a rock star that he's like on day number 2, but he is still producing the show because that's how much it means to us to get this information to you. So word up to Sean. We love you, man.
Thank you, buddy. I want to hide. I'll be out hiding off the screen most of the show, so don't copy you guys or anything else. But, if you see me,
we don't mind.
Yeah,
we don't mind seeing your face.
I'm not a cat. This is me. Yeah.
We love you, truly,
right,
and we are very, very excited that you are such a warrior, that you can continue to make sure this show happens through a global pandemic that has made its way into your household. So we love you, we love you.
Likewise, we got a great show, guys. I'll be out. I'll see you at the end, but I'll be producing you guys.
Right on, man. As long as we get all the way to digital Dissent. So this show is incredibly important. All our shows, I think, are very important because we bring the best guests from around the world to tell you what's happening in the information space. And also my co-hosts are very knowledgeable as well. But we're going to just jump right in today because we have a super packed show. And the main thing I want to get to is that we have a couple brilliant special guests at the very top who are OSINT researchers and investigators, very influential. Brent Allpress coming all the way in from Australia. And hey, my friend, woo! And we also have Chris Vickery, who is coming in all the way from NorCal. I love you, man. The reason these two guys are joining us is because my partners and I, one partner in particular, Jim Stewartson, is getting the same day different troll, blue ops stalking happening to him. It's knocked him off Twitter a third time, but both Brent and Chris see the game, know what it is, and I'd love both of you to weigh in, starting with Chris, on not only why you decided to speak out on Twitter and on our show after you saw what was happening, but what your observations are.
You said I go first, right?
Yeah, that's right, Chris.
I didn't want to jump in out of turn, but yeah, the thing that really stood out to me was when I saw Jim's blog post that somebody had linked to on Twitter, because right now Jim can't post on Twitter, and he listed on a bullet point list 10 different types of troll campaigns that have been launched against him that are different plays in like an information war playbook, like a character assassination. Pick one of these plays, run it, then grab the next team, grabs one, then runs it, the next team grabs it, like a play in football. One is a rushing play, one's a passing play, one's a Hail Mary. And this, about 9 of the 10 ones that he listed there are exact same things that have been tried against me, not ultimately successfully in the past, but I see the same things happening over and over to other people. And the common pattern is that we're all people that are vocally against the authoritarian fascist takeover of America. We happen to be people that know about the history of America. We understand what is wrong to do to others and what will lead to basically a terrible dystopian future. And we all seem to be targets of these same plays over and over and over again. And that really struck a chord with me that, oh my God, it felt out of the blue when these things were being tried against me. But seeing it happen to someone else, it's the same thing over and over again.
Well, thank you so much for that, Chris, because it happened to me in 2018. My life was blown up both online and offline. And I find it very fascinating and very reassuring in a way that one of the same core blue op accounts that went after me in 2018 and my candidate at the time that I was working with on a congressional campaign to get rid of Dana Rohrabacher also jumped into the fray with Jim. So I think it's very interesting that these recurring players not only still have their blue check marks on Twitter, but are still running the same plays that they did against me 4 years ago.
Well, the thing about the blue check mark on Twitter thing is people need to kind of separate the idea that that means an endorsement from Twitter. The only thing a blue check mark means is you submitted a copy of your passport, your driver's license, your utility bill to Twitter, and they verified that you are who you say you are. It doesn't mean that they like what you say. It doesn't mean that what you're saying has any value to it. It just means that you went through their process and they verified that the person you are claiming to be is who you are. That's all it really means.
Yep.
Right on. And Brent, what is your assessment of what you see happening? And again, on behalf of Jim and the team, thank you so much for sticking your neck out to jump into the thread that we showed about what happened to Jim on the third ban, and give your assessment of the work that Jim has been doing to show and highlight what Mike Flynn is up to.
Well, I'd sort of confirm everything Chris has said. I watched Chris's account be attacked in a very concerted way and reported some of the most troubling instances of that at the time, and I also tracked Jim's account. There was a particular account run by Tony Shaffer, who's an associate of Mike and Joe Flynn, and he ran an account called at T Spooky. So that's his claim to fame, presumably ex-Intel. But that account, I just forensically went through instances where that account had attacked Jim's account, provoked him, went through a series of character attacks, or sought to provoke a response, or a sort of finesse trolling. And then I went through and tracked that account, running a pattern of that, and then basically celebrating instances. The account said, I'm seeking to get five accounts banned today, so that was the sort of, and then he and Joe Flynn were both celebrating that Jim's account was knocked out in the instance prior to this one. So I reported Tony Shaffer's account at TS Spooky, and he's gone. He's off Twitter. They banned him for specifically for violating rules against abuse and harassment. And his
which
account
is what I got banned for.
Yeah. Well, that's the projection irony of this. But he has gone. So he's moved off to another platform. I think in his case, he won't be. I wasn't the only person who reported him, but I went up. Well, what I just did was just there were very, very clear instances of targeted abuse, which they had enough hubris and to be blatant about. They were celebrating it. So, what I'd like to know would be whether there's some sort of infrastructure underneath that, the equivalent of a bot farm or coordinated accounts that are then making multiple complaints. Because I think that's how they're running this, is through a kind of equivalent of the St. Petersburg based IRA kind of technique of multiple controlled accounts or coordinated accounts who then all pile in with complaints, and then you hit a kind of threshold and they just pull it in.
So the interesting thing is that the account that Heidi was talking about, and my most dedicated abuser, actually collaborated, who LARPs as a leftist, collaborated with Tony Shaffer in order to get me suspended, and bragged about it. Right.
Yeah.
So you have Tony Shaffer, who's Bernie Carrick and Rudy Giuliani, like the worst, collaborating with somebody who LARPs as a resistor. And it's really important that people understand, like, what they have on the front, like what's in their profile means nothing. Yeah. What matters is, what do they do? What do they say? Right. Are they attacking people? Like, are they actually giving information out, or are they just targeting others, right? Is there anything productive or valuable about their account beyond the fact that they're just they just want to take other people down. And it's just, I think it's a critical thing for people to understand. You gotta look past the veneer. And if somebody's like commenting on another thread, about somebody, there's a reason for that. In a very few cases, it's like legitimate, authentic concern. In almost every other case, it's people, intentionally trying to, hurt others.
Well, I think it's important to note that we have people from all around the world documenting the amount of effort and time that is spent on harassing and basically libeling, and character assassination of Jim Stewartson. And of course, it's spilling over onto me. I'm used to it. I've been there before. We know it's because we do good work. But I think that it's interesting to me that in 2022, that there could still be a few people out there who don't get what this game is. It's so obvious to me.
I think they get it is the thing. I think they know exactly what they're doing.
Well, for example, we have friends who got tripped up on it.
No, that's true.
Who were like, is Jim a felon? No, Jim is not a felon. That's what this operation is saying. Is Jim really not who he appears to be? Actually, he's really who he appears to be. Somebody who is trying to prevent America from being a hellscape. And, since Brent and Chris have seen it, now in real time, and also seen it historically in the last 5 years ongoing, what would you want to tell people who are still sort of unfamiliar with this type of activity?
Well, you have to push back by reporting instances of abuse and harassment. And so I think it takes a little bit of time. If you go forensically back through accounts, there'll be a pattern. So if you see it, pursue it.
Well,
on a platform like this, anyway. More generally, I just think you have to be very cautious about any reputational attacks that have, given the it's basically mud sticks, and if they throw it out there into a public discourse that's sort of barely moderated, then the opportunity for disinformation is heightened. So you don't want to be a party to that. You don't want to amplify it. Yeah. So I sort of tend to stick with verifiable and documented and reliable sourcing, and
yes.
Steer clear of the kind of
what this one account is doing, Brent, is they're making all these accusations, they are saying all these things, they're dropping all these negative comments.
Yeah.
And then they'll lock their tweets, they'll go back a few weeks or so, they'll delete all the negative comments about, in this instance, Jim, right? And they'll wipe out that forensic evidence. So how do you get Twitter to produce that as like, there are ways through their API in which you can document an account's tweets. And
well, but note that it doesn't matter if they go delete them all, because we already have people who prior to the lockdown and prior to the deletes are documenting all of it. So it doesn't matter if they do a tweet wipe, because we do have the evidence. But I understand your point. It's a way for them to sort of try to kind of CYA.
The thing is, these are professionals. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know how to get around Twitter TOS, right? So there's no given tweet, right, that somebody at Twitter is going to go, oh my God, I have to ban this account. Yeah. The issue is there's tens of thousands of these. Tens of thousands. Like I've got a large room where all these feeds come in, and it is absolutely crazy. Like tens of thousands of tweets about me personally, taking me down about complete bullshit. Right.
And what's interesting about what Jim also just said is it's the same handful of accounts. So I find it quite fascinating and quite telling that an account with a blue check with 275,000 followers or 90,000 followers, when they go after Jim, they get 4 likes, 2 retweets. Now, these are supposed to be big deal accounts. So to me, it says you're talking within your community, but it does still, I think where we have not caught up with the online world is it does still have real world ramifications. I'm used to it.
Just because they don't like
to,
it, what's important here, I just want to say, sorry to interrupt, Heidi, but
no, it's
just
good.
because they don't like or retweet it, that doesn't mean anything. Like, what matters is who saw it, how many people saw it, right? How many people have seen that lie? So if there's, let's say 50,000 tweets in the last, several months about me personally, how many views did each one of those tweets have? How many? So, how many fucking thousands of impressions, wrong impressions have people gotten about me personally? That's what it's about. And Twitter doesn't have a way to say, hey, look at this like soup of shitheads who are just lying about me all day. Why don't you do something about it? Because they know how to avoid
the best
the POS.
vaccination for this type of thing, a way to inoculate the public, is to get people to do an exercise where they put themselves in the attacker's mindset and say, hey, if I, maybe somebody could make a game or something online that is like, pretend that you're a hardcore bad guy troll person. You've got an army of bots in this little fake game environment. How would you go about trying to destroy someone's reputation? What would you say about them? What would you do? What could you do if you had 10,000 accounts on a social networking platform and get people in the mindset of, oh my God, that is what somebody could do if they had a bunch of fake accounts? What could you say about somebody? Even if it wasn't true, what would the impact then be? If I sent emails to every person that person is connected to on LinkedIn, or plastered their workplace HR department with complaints, or if I called their family members or got my followers to call their family members, what could you do? And when you get into the attacker mindset and you realize what's possible, you see through the curtain. You're at the Wizard of Oz, and you're calling BS on his big projection and seeing through it, and you're now a little bit more immune to the effects of those campaigns.
Well, I will say the one thing to both your points, when it was run against me in 2018, there was a lot more interaction, and I was devastated because I had no framework and I didn't know fully what was happening. But I will say that the candidate and team that I was working with stuck by me staunchly and didn't waver, and that really helped me get through it. And a few of my friends on Twitter, I had like 2 friends left after my reputation was blasted with malinformation. So we do have a different era where there is more awareness, but it is still a devastating thing when it happens.
Well, they're getting better at it, though.
Yes, they're getting better at it. But I would like to have both Brent and Chris, before they leave us, A, give advice to Jim, and B, give advice to anybody from Twitter that is actually listening and actually gives a shit about how people are hurt on their platform.
I think one key thing to reinforce is, why would they go after Jim? And the key reason that I can see for someone very closely associated with the ex-General Mike Flynn, I should prefer to call him, is that that Jim has really ruined Mike Flynn's chances of taking on a political career by outing the fact that he plagiarized a theosophical New Age far-right guru who was apocalyptic. He edited out the words Archangel Michael from the prayer, but then on another platform, in order to defend himself, he said he identified with the prayer because it was about Saint Michael, that his namesake. So that find by Jim is very, very damaging to Mike Flynn, because it completely dropped the mask on him. So that whole psyops, the positioning himself as a Christian leader, positioning himself as someone who advocates for one nation, one church, one leader, and then using shortly after that a cultic prayer from a extremist cult leader from the 80s, and repositioning that as a form of Christian nationalism, for which he is the leader. I mean, that's the thing that he was attempting to do. He was using cultic material to create a cult.
That's right.
And he got caught.
That's
he got
right.
caught really badly because it was really bloody sloppy of him. And, you know, so how do you start a cult? Well, I'll just use cultic material over here. Here's something I've prepared earlier. I'm going to take out the bits that I like as a narcissist because they refer to me, and I'm going to make that a bit more generalized, and then admit, and in self-defense, that actually I really like that prayer because it actually is about my namesake. So he's stuffed in terms of his ongoing religious credentials, because the kind of constituency is conservative Catholics and conservative evangelicals, and they draw the line at heresy, and
Yeah,
they do. You know, that's one of those little kind of. There's a few lines there, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
He got badly caught out. And the other thing is that he was using cultic practices from that church. So the delivery, the kind of call and response, so I went through, as Jim had done, I followed in his footsteps in terms of going through, because I wasn't aware of Elizabeth Clare Prophet, particularly until Jim made that connection. But there's very clearly a kind of cultic kind of delivery. There's a kind of mesmerizing focus on the patterning of words, the kind of usage of language, the kind of provocations, the kind of claims to authority, and in her case, this sort of really strange kind of mesmeric kind of chanting they do of I am Michael. Now that must have really attracted Michael Flynn, because there's a lot of Michaeling in that I am movement. I am Michael,
dude.
You know?
Dude.
Yeah,
Although I would like to point out, Brent, you heard it here first, kids. If you're going to try to overthrow the American government, don't blaspheme. That's bad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, not only did Jim find that, but he also has been working diligently on exposing, and has for 18 months because of his unique knowledge on augmented reality gaming, that there is, Michael Flynn behind so much of the, radicalizing of our folks through these cult-like game-like, disinformation ops. And that ran counter to what we now believe, and I've come to believe, thanks to the work of my colleagues, may be a pretty obvious controlled opposition to try to dial down Mike Flynn's involvement and others' involvement. And that's something that will still be revealed. But it does seem likely that if they're going to target Jim in the way they are, that it might be that he gummed up the works on a narrative that might have been pre-approved and pre-scripted by some of these folks.
Well, I think one of the things about QAnon is that once you create a beast like that, you can't control it. And so that thing can eat itself, because what they've been doing is radicalizing people who are high on conscientiousness and high on neurosis on the ocean spectrum, and often, maybe a little less stable. And it's a, be careful what you wish for. If you want to create a cult, that can go all sorts of dangerous ways.
Right.
So I think there's I don't know that they have full control over the thing that they've created. There are certainly a few odd events there with yoga bums doing road blockages that really seem to kind of go way off to the far left right kind of extreme. There's very odd things occur there. Everyone's going, what's going on there? So I think they lost control of what they created to a certain degree.
But as researchers, which we all are in our various ways, like, I'm not really worried about what you're doing over there, because I'm focusing on this. So I'm not going to come at you sideways and try to discredit you, your family, your whatever, your life, your work. because I don't have time, because I'm too busy doing the work to try to expose all the fuckery that's trying to take out our democracy. So to Chris's point of getting in the head of the people that are running these plays to discredit people, if they were legitimately doing the work, they would not have time to worry about what Jim or HiFi or Brent or Chris or Heidi's doing.
I mean, that's the thing, right? None of them are attacking what I said. None of them are attacking the actual, evidence that I
Well, they don't want
provided.
to draw attention to it.
They are busy attacking me personally.
Yeah.
And I'm a difficult target, and I knew, because I've done some stuff, and I'm not a fucking criminal. I have no criminal record at all. I am who I am. I'm just a dude, right? And so I figured, okay, they can do this, but there's nothing actually that they have on me. Like, there's nothing there. And
Right.
so it made it challenging for them to do, but they figured it out. They've, out of 45,000 tweets, they've taken a couple of mistakes, which I corrected immediately, and like say that means I'm some sort of misinformation distributor when I've exposed more disinformation.
The saddest part is that for them, this ultimately the worst case scenario is it's practice for the team. They know that they're going to need to be able to do this hardcore to real targets. So even if you're not anybody special, it's like a sports team that's practicing, and they are risking nothing but staying quote unquote in shape, I guess, by running this against somebody. And Heidi asked, what is like the one lesson that I would want to give to the Twitter public? And that is the thing that I want to tell everybody about is think about social media influencing people, the people that really are opinionated or put out things that might change your opinion or have a particular slant. Think of them like bartenders. The really, really powerful, bad, most damaging trolls are not the obvious ones that spew racism and horrible misinformation. The most damaging ones are the ones that give you really, really sweet, good advice and are strong, good friends, except for maybe that 10 or 20% of the time when they slip in the alcohol, the poison. They give you a good tasting overall experience. They get buddied with you. You agree on a lot of things, and then they slide you the poison in that 10 or 20% of their comments. Those are the most damaging ones.
Thank you for that.
I watched that happen to Chris on his account, and I was concerned that there were accounts that seemed to be favourable, but they were then adverse. And then I went back through some of those accounts and tracked a pattern of malicious behaviour. So they're basically the kind of accounts that are, as he describes, 90% sort of positive, and then because I did a few. So one way to track some of these accounts is if you do a search on Twitter for some key malicious term, or some, particularly if someone is trying to provoke somebody else over a particular issue, and you see if there's any pattern of that. So you put in the Twitter username and take a term they've used in a malicious context, and then see how many times they've used that, because there's generally a pattern. And so so that's one of the ways in which that was quite eye-opening to me, that there was a kind of a sort of psychological campaign that gets waged on individual accounts that appear to be benign, and then start to kind of push and slide and provoke and and there's that's if you're a user yourself. In terms of being influenced by things, I think I think you just have to be vigilant, because it's gossip is something that, it was just that's the level of kind of nonsense, really, that some of the stuff is. If you say it, there's no authority particularly to anything on Twitter unless it's sort of backed up by evidence or reputation, and so they'll go after reputation. And so I think you have to take the stuff with a pinch of salt. I take a long-term view with some accounts that I trust or don't trust, in any social media context. I've made some misjudgments where I've thought counter emotions at work.
We all have.
You know, because I have a very high kind of, you know, I keep a high barrier up. So, you know, that's I haven't been attacked. I haven't been a target of attack so much recently. More attempts to get information. You know,
Yes.
friendly inquiries that are actually just looking for intelligence. That would be what I'd describe.
I want to thank you guys so much for being here, and I just want to leave us with one Hannah Arendt quote. When you can't attack somebody on the facts, you question their motives. And so what we're seeing is a lot of that sort of concern, trolling, of questioning of motives. And I do ask our friends who have been our friends for a long time to stay with us. We're going to keep doing this work. Whether Jim does it on Twitter or Substack won't really matter. He already has hundreds of people following him on a Substack that he started like yesterday. So we're going to continue doing the work. We do hope to see him back on Twitter. Chris, I love you and Ruthie. Thank you so much for being here. Brent, you know how I feel about you. When I saw the two of you out there swinging hard on behalf of, you know, helping our you know, our Jim here and, you know, us kind of fight back when we can't defend ourselves. It really meant a lot to me and to the guys personally.
It meant everything to me. It really did. Thank you guys.
That's good. Is there any way in which, Jim, in which your Twitter archive can be made available via another medium if you aren't able to get back onto that platform?
I had a Twitter archive like already, and but I hadn't downloaded it yet, and then I got suspended, so I couldn't download it because they won't let you download your archive after you get suspended.
Okay. Well, we know where the pertinent stuff is, and we will continue to expose it.
I have everything. It's just you know. Yeah.
There are firms
guys, thank you so much for being here.
To get that.
Okay.
So I say that again, Chris.
There are firms that offer commercial services where what they do is they archive all social media, and I can send you some names. They have all your tweets.
Fantastic.
Cool.
That's great. That's good to know, actually. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to be here with us. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Wow, that was so great. Wow. Thank you. Wow. Okay, well, we have a huge show coming up. We actually have Craig Unger of American Kompromat as our guest, and he's written 5 books on the GOP's assault on democracy. And I still
can't believe Craig Unger is going to be on our show.
He has been hyper.
I know, right?
Yeah, we don't want to make him wait too long, but he has been hyper focused on following the decades-long Kompromat related to Trump and Russia, and his book American Kompromat is vital reading if anybody wants to understand what's happened to our country in the last few years. It's incredible.
So crazy.
He's incredible.
Like you guys, like we had a fucking Russian asset in the White House, and
he was
everybody needs to read Unger. Just
read his book. It's not. I mean, it's incredible research, but it's also right there. Like, he just put it together in a way that makes it super clear. Like,
that's right.
Dude has been a fucking Russian op for 40 years.
Yes. So
the one thing I loved in your article about him, I'll shut up in a second, was that the full page ads he did in the New York Times, those are KGB ops.
I know.
Active measures, bro.
Measures. All super psyched about all that shit, man. It's it's crazy. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
I reread that article today. I did an interview with Craig for Byline Times. That's what Jim's referring to. And it's so dope. And I just retweeted it today, so anyone who follows me on Twitter can find it. So I am really excited, though, about burning through some of this. Thank you so much, Sean. That is the article right there. It's incredible because it really follows the history. It shows when people got into America, the deal they had to sign with the KGB to come here, and how they then became handlers for people like Trump. And they just found people that looked like they might be good opportunity for the Russians. And Trump was an easy mark because he was always broke. He was always compromised. He always had the sexual weirdness. And so we're going to get into that with Craig, and I'm so excited. But now let's kind of breeze through some of our, I don't want to short shrift the important work that we do here every week with HiFi bringing the news, and Jim talking about Hellscape. It's going to be a very special Hellscape today, a very personal one. But before you jump into word phrase of the week, I want to address one thing for me. My reputation is once again being smeared with an old-timey malinformation campaign. Yes, I worked at Fox 11 News for the better part of 15 years. And yes, there are articles of mine that ran in right-wing rags at the time. They just got picked up by various fiscal publications. And yes, I talk about it in my book, It's Complicated, which you can buy for $15 on my coffee link. So if you want to know about my sordid history, go there. I think that it's quite telling that these narratives keep getting recycled. And really all that matters to me is the work and my children's love and the love of my team. So that's really all I have to say about that. When you see people trying to make me look like a boogeyman, you know, I won't pass any purity tests, and I'm perfectly fine with that, because what a dreary, boring life it would be to spring out of the womb, you know, perfect to pass, you know, whatever fucking test people want to put you through.
Anybody coming after Heidi, man, you just come on.
She's the nice one. Like,
you gotta be fucking
what the
kidding
hell?
me. Do you realize how stupid and horrible you look going after Heidi? For God's sake, she's the nicest person I've ever met in my entire life. It's
you know,
crazy. It's just fucking crazy.
They never say she wrote a book with Ice-T, Tupac's Bodyguard on Sublime, all my punk rock stuff, my LA Times stuff. It's like, oh, public policy around something she did with a pissed off cop. Well, yeah, that's true. I did. So fucking what? What did I do after November 8th of 2016? That's all I give a shit about. And you know what? If you actually look it up, you'll see what I was doing September of 2016, which was writing and making myself very unpopular, because I knew Trump was a fraud and I started exposing him as soon as I realized he was going to win. That's a story for another day. But, you know, I learned a long time ago, like, you know, you can't make anybody like you, and I don't care. I just keep doing the work. I'm just glad, like I said, my kids like me, you guys like me, I like you, and that's what matters. HiFi, every time they try to take us out, they show a tweet of yours on a banned account where you were going to use a scalpel. Now, I know that you're not a doctor, but just give us 30 seconds on that, because I don't want to spend
30 seconds. It's very obvious. All right. So listen, I was back on Something Awful in the day when I was in my early 20s, and I was on 4chan in Beat, Whack Beat, right? Where the bros, we trolled the living crap out of each other. We desensitized ourselves. We were awful to each other. We were horrible. I then went to Google Plus. I met a troll crew there from a bunch of people who left 4chan when all the pedophiles and Nazis showed up. Odd that they showed up at the same time. But anyway, and you know, we used our powers for good to troll. We trolled white supremacists. We actually catfished a white supremacist once to sending us a picture of him and a teddy with a stuffed animal. Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah, so I'm a troll. So when I realized, you know, all I wanted was the Rittenhouse fundraiser taken down, I started going into the people behind it because they wouldn't take it down. I started looking at it more and more and more. It looked more jacked up and more jacked up. And while this is occurring, and while I'm posting about this stuff on Twitter, I start getting attacked by trolls. Mm-hmm. And I figure out what's going on. Holy shit. I'm being attacked in a concerted effort by a troll crew, by multiple troll crews at this point.
Right.
And so I did what came naturally. I trolled back.
Yeah, you trolled hard. You were.
And I am scarier and darker than. Sorry, I've been doing it longer, right?
Here's the thing. I don't give a shit. What I care about is the work that you do and what you bring to this show, and that's what I care about with Jim. And that's what I care about with Sean. And yes, you know, blanket apologies to anybody we inadvertently offended along the way, and everyone else just fuck all the way off, because we're trying to do the work now.
Listen up. My friend Fidelity here is the most generous human being in the world, like the kindest person, like not the nicest person by any stretch of the imagination. He's not fucking nice
I'm not
at
nice.
all.
I'm not so nice. Sorry.
But kind, caring, empathetic, somebody who would give his fucking shirt off his back, and has, you know, give me a fucking break. All the people out there, especially the one who keeps posting that tweet. Are you kidding me? After like,
well, I find it
trolling
funny
for your entire career and spending the last 3 weeks literally dedicated to tearing me down. You're gonna bring up a fucking tweet like from a year ago when he was being trolled by the same crew that you're running now. Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Well, I gotta
There we
say, I don't know where I would have been the last 6 months if it wasn't for HiFi.
There's a lot of people who can say that.
Yeah.
And he does not.
Yeah.
I found out about shit he was doing for me from other people.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
because I don't need to talk about the shit I do. I just do it.
Well, the other thing is that when I asked Jim, you know, if I could bring HiFi into this crew, Jim's first words were, he's like the most loyal person. And when you're going to battle, you look for some qualities. Yeah, we're all smart, good researchers. We are what we are. But loyalty, kindness, big hearts, having each other's back, that's very meaningful. And before this
caring. Caring.
Right.
It's just caring in general, right? Like giving a shit about our country, giving a shit about the well-being of other human beings, giving a shit about how your actions affect other human beings. If you are spending all day long tearing somebody down, you are a sociopath. Yeah. There's no other way for you to be that way, right? All you're doing is intentionally harming somebody. Yeah. Inauthentically. That means you're a sociopath. Fucking knock it off. It's not.
Well,
it's not
I will
difficult.
say this though, because what the next accusation is going to be made is that, oh, Josh is just a loyal dog, right? No, I'm not blindly loyal. I will call people on their bullshit. I don't care who you are. Yeah. I call myself on my bullshit. I call other people on their bullshit. I'm not blindly loyal. But when I know someone is speaking truth, when I know someone is right, when what they say makes sense, when they have data to back up what they say, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, Sean just sent a note because we're going to talk a little bit about trauma later. Some people may be dealing with their trauma in their own special way, but so the ringleaders clearly, again, if they're not getting paychecks, they should be, because why would they spend all their waking hours trying to take down people who are actually doing excellent work? Speaking of excellent work, we want to, before we bring Craig Unger, and I want to spend 15-20 minutes just like going through our news. So let's get right to it. Word phrase of the week.
Word phrase of the week. Word phrase of the week, and I wanted to do this because Craig Unger is here, is fascist theocracy or theocratic fascist. Okay. And what does that mean? That means a person or group of individuals who think that their religion should be the number one religion, the basis for law in a country. You can see this in examples of, groups like the BJP in India. You can see this in ISIS and the Islamic Caliphate. And currently you can see it in people inside the GOP. And I also wanted to, that's a quick version. I think Frank Zappa explains it better. So Sean, if you could roll that clip for me.
Yeah, let's do some quick hits.
Well, I said I agree with Mr. Zappa that the first line of defense and responsibility is the parents. But what I do not agree with is that the parents have to stand alone, and we are not entitled to call upon our government to help us in the fight against this kind of filth.
What government censor is going to decide for you?
It's not. Tom, I've heard you say repeatedly on this show that we are our government, that we're allowed to call on our government.
Well, you have to have a man who is the censor or a woman. They have to decide this Lofton can hear and this Lofton cannot hear.
Tom, it would work the way the implementation of any law works. You pass a law, it has words in it, and then the elected representatives of the people try their best to apply it. It's the way you do it with everything else. Will they apply it perfectly? No. But we're entitled to use the force of our civil government to help protect our families. How could you oppose that? Does the government have any purpose, Frank?
Yeah, it has a number of purposes.
What is it?
I'm not going to give you a civics lesson here, but I'll tell you one thing. We must not see eye to eye on the idea of a government that must forbid things in order to protect
What is the government's role? You've told me several times what it shouldn't do.
How about national defense?
Yeah, I consider this national defense, pal. Our families are under attack from people like you with these lyrics.
John, you don't have to buy them.
Mr. Zappa, could I make a statement about national defense?
Yeah.
The biggest threat to America today is not communism. It's moving America toward a fascist theocracy. And everything that's happened during the Reagan administration is steering us right down that pipe.
Oh, Mr. Zappa, do you really think? I mean, all kidding.
I love
fucking
Frank Zappa.
Amazing.
I love
That's a great interview on Fascist Theocracy with Frank Zappa. And yeah, he really breaks it down. And what we're seeing right now is an attempt to slide America into a fascist theocracy.
Yep.
So
it's part of a three-pronged plan, which we're going to talk more about with Craig Unger. So what's next?
yes. All right. So next we're going to do Why It Matters. So
Great.
Sean, can you play me into Why It Matters?
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why high fidelity?
All right. So first we're going to talk about what a week. Hey, this has been a great week if you are a fan of democracy. All right. Some of the things that happened. Prince Andrew was stripped of all of his military rankings and his titles by the British monarchy. Why is that important? Because Prince Andrew knows something about Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein is still, even though he's dead, tied into everything we're dealing with right now. The next thing is Domestic Terrorism Task Force. The Department of Justice is starting a new domestic terrorism task force. That's awesome because, as we know, a lot of what we're dealing with is domestic terrorism. OAN was dropped by DirecTV. Hooray. OAN got a lot of its revenue from DirecTV. And the fact that they were dropped means they'll probably go away. So that's one less disinformation pipeline into the American minds. Awesome. And then the final thing that I really do want to discuss quite a bit is Stewart Rhodes was arrested and charged with seditious conspiracy along with 10 other Oath Keepers. Stewart Rhodes, Yale Law graduate Stewart Rhodes. Hold on, I thought the colleges were liberal bastions of eliteness. What the hell? Why is a Yale Law graduate trying to overthrow our country? Jim?
Well, because so what? That he's a fucking racist, Proud Boy, Nazi piece of shit.
Well, that would explain it.
Let's be clear. Anyway, I was looking deeply into the Oath Keepers before I got nuked, and found an old Joe Flynn tweet from January 5th. January 5th. 2021 of Mike Flynn providing $100,000 to Code of Vets. Code of Vets is a front for the Oath Keepers. That's all it is. It's just fucking Oath Keepers front, and they these donations that they send to these guys is to go weaponize them so that they will do shit like participate in the insurrection of the Capitol. So fucking like the Flynns were paying the Oath Keepers. They did it through a front called Code of Vets, but on the day before the insurrection. And, again, by a fucking Twitter account, I could show it to you.
Well, one of the things I have learned is soldiers do need to be paid. I mean, if you want them to fight, you have to pay them.
Well, I do want to point something out, though. Jim's Substack, which I read because I get all the alerts, and so do hundreds of other people who just signed up for it. It's kind of nice in a way. I know this sounds like lipstick on a pig, but it's really not. It's kind of nice to have you get a little bit more breathing room to articulate the context to some of this stuff. So I do want you back on Twitter, but I'm very grateful.
My context right now is just being very pissed off at a bunch of idiots.
Yeah,
and because I don't have to worry about Twitter's TOS. And by the way, I work my ass off to not break any Twitter rules. I know those fucking rules upside down. And and I didn't. I did
Shout
not break the
out
rules
to,
because I put too much fucking investment into it. So, you know.
I just want to shout out to Rosanna Arquette and to Stella Parton and to Neil
Gaiman.
Yes,
Don't forget
and,
Neil Gaiman's name.
And John Cooper
Wow.
and our friends who retweeted the thread that really explains all three of these with documentations and receipts. I just want to say thank you, because you guys putting your thumb on the scale on behalf of Jim and this crew and the wrongness of all of this is very, very meaningful. And, you know, and Cake, you know what I'm saying? Like, Cake is always showing up.
I couldn't believe Cake retweeted that shit. I love that.
Cake music is awesome, dude.
I know. So I just, you know, it's beautiful. And just the supporters. I made a round of phone calls to people who bought my book on Friday, and I learned so much about what's happening in people's worlds and their lives, and the children that they're worried about with brainwashing. And there's a lot of love and support for you, Jim. Each person I called said that if it hadn't been for finding you and seeing what was really happening, they would still be like clutching their pillow at night. So I want you to know that your work is incredibly meaningful. And as you taught me, just keep going and don't stop. All right, HiFi.
All right, the next one we're going to talk about is Pegasus and Papooses.
Okay, let's do it.
And everybody's like, first, what's a papusa? If you don't know, papusa.
It's a yummy El Salvadorian treat.
There you go.
Yeah.
And they are delicious. I highly suggest everyone try some. That's the best thing about being international is the food.
Yeah.
Right. But what it turns out is the El Salvador government maybe have purchased Pegasus software from NSO Group, as it was found on a number, I believe it was 30 journalists' cell phones. Now the government of El Salvador does say, oh, no, we never bought that. But Pegasus said, NSO Group says, well, we only sell to governments and approved agencies. So how the hell did it end up there? That's a good question. The other thing I would like to point out about El Salvador is the president of El Salvador tried to make Bitcoin a national currency, or made it a national currency, which is failing miserably. And we all know where we and Dave Troy stand on crypto. It's a fascist scam. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's going to be so interesting when the pyramid scheme is revealed. You know,
El Salvador has been a target for a long time. If you guys recall, it was the CIA infiltrated that shit. And by the way, all the radicalization that's going on now, you know, it was happening in El Salvador in a big way. Again, on my Twitter feed is a long thread going through an old CIA document from literal training of Sandinistas to radicalize their followers on purpose in order to
I've been to El
chaos.
Salvador. I love El Salvador. It's got one of the best surf spots in the world, and beautiful people, great food, the world's greatest coffee. So I'm hoping that they come out of this intact, because I feel like, you know, we look at these things globally. And so it's really important. I say this every week, that we pay attention to what's happening globally. I think you haven't mentioned the OAN being dropped yet, have you?
Oh, I missed that part.
Because I just want to say that Jim is the first one.
No. I mentioned OAN. Yeah, OAN got dropped by DirecTV.
Because I just want to say that Jim is the first one who mentioned to me when I first met him that networks like that are essentially Russian propaganda networks. And so the fact that, you know, there's going to be some Russian propagandists out of work, maybe they'll get picked up by RT or Fox.
So just briefly, the reason why my whole investigation got seriously kicked into gear was because of Chanel Rion from OAN showing up in the White House briefing room on an emergency basis in COVID, you know, in the middle of a pandemic. Trump shoved her into the White House briefing room to have her run an op that I saw in QAnon. So the Russians, and it was the Russians, this was technically, it's a whole article about it.
Yeah.
It was the Russians who redirected Antifa.com to JoeBiden.com.
Wow.
And it first showed up in QAnon. I saw it because I was trolling around in there like, what the fuck is going on? And then I see this thing and it actually worked. And I was like, okay, what's that about? And then Chanel Rion shows up on my fucking TV in the White House briefing room to say, did you know that Antifa.com goes to JoeBiden.com? Do you think that Joe Biden should denounce Antifa? Like, I was just like, holy shit. It's literally a fucking Russian technical op that gets spread in right-wing media that ends up in the fucking White House. And then because of that gets broadcast to Fox, which is where I saw it. Like,
wow.
So, and I saw that and I was like, oh, fuck. It's holy shit. It really is Russian propaganda. Like, not even just modeling it. It's actual Russian propaganda. And you know, that one thing, bringing up the Russians, is why I'm being attacked right now.
Right.
It is.
I laugh
the
because
first
it's so
four
clear.
people, the first 4 people that I DM'd about this are 4 of the biggest validators to the attack on me right now. And the reason is because I had the temerity to say, hey, dude, this is fucking Russian. You know, you guys are like, shouldn't we talk about the Russians? And they were like, you're crazy. And then they started attacking me.
Well, there's a beautiful story I did with Dave Troy that shows those links. So if you want to see the links between the Kremlin operatives and the far right operatives, go look up that article with Heidi, Dave, and Byline. Sean, is Craig already here? If not, I put his cell phone number in our.
We've got one more story.
I know. I'm just making sure that I just want to see if Craig is not.
He's on deck. Yep.
Okay, great. So we're going to do one more story. Then Jim's going to talk a bit about his little bit about trauma, essentially. But just hit that one story in 30 seconds, and then let's get to Jim's Hellscape.
Okay, the story I want to talk about is OMG OIG. And what is this about? This is about an employee of the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General pleaded guilty this week to stealing case management software and sensitive databases from the Department of Homeland Security. Why is this important? Because as Craig Unger goes into his book, there's a whole thing about promise and ins law with case management software being stolen from this company, Ins Law. There are dead bodies around it, specifically a guy named Danny Casolaro.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand, if our own government cannot keep their databases safe and secure, if they cannot keep their own software safe and secure, how are we supposed to trust all these vendors that we now share our private lives with?
Right. We don't trust them, and it was dumb to put everything online, and the private life is dead, and we need to do something about that, which is going to be another battle after we get through November of 2022. HiFi, thank you so much for a brilliant news block. It's always so insightful and so relevant to the work that we do. I'd like to get directly into Jim's Hellscape before we bring on Mr. Unger.
Jim Stewartson's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
All right. Oh,
we lost our oh, fuck.
Oh, fuck. All right, friend.
So I don't really have this scripted out at all. But I wanted to talk about trauma and why people attack others, and just a couple of the things that they do. So all cults, all groups that are trying to create undue influence in others, right, whether it's a small group or a big one, uses trauma to try and influence them, right? In QAnon and some of these other things, they use these horrible traumatic videos in order to induce this effect. But you can also do it by creating conflict, creating chaos, infiltrating people, and having other people that they trust turn against them. All of those things are incredibly traumatic, right? Like, just to say it, I've had a few friends that I really trusted, like seriously trusted, are now out there like hanging around this insane group of psychos who are attacking me all day long, and they're out there participating. It's the fucking weirdest thing until I started to understand it. There's a thing called trauma bonding, right? Where you get somebody in a kind of a close-knit group, you get them trusting with each other, and then something like crazy happens. Oh, somebody needs to be rescued. Something, there's a fight, quick, go get it. Oh, there's, some, whatever, make it up. I could name a few of these, but I won't. And everybody runs around and it's fucking crazy. And then, oh my God, finally our family comes back together and now we're one big happy family. And then, exactly what Chris was saying before, I think it was Chris, they will then take that opportunity to start poisoning the people that they want to attack, that they want to take you away from, that they want to, impugn. And they will do this over time, repeatedly, over and over again. So it's coercive, cult behavior, frankly. And it gets people into a state where they believe shit that they would never normally believe. Like, I'm telling you, like these people, have no reason whatsoever to have turned on me like that, and they're doing it out of nowhere. And I don't believe it's because they're bad people. I think it's because they had these terrible traumatic techniques used on them. I've had all of these techniques used on me, all of them. Infiltrating my friends, turning my friends, fucking attacking my volunteer group in a way that like still astounds me. Yeah. And it's all designed to cause trauma, to make people like me not want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys haven't met me yet then, because I ain't stopped.
We're stubborn as shit.
But there's a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are not as stubborn as me, like all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they start getting attacked, and they'll just stop, or they'll change.
Well, also,
their opinion.
People have taken their own lives. I mean, so to me, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about Mean Girls on steroids. I'm reflecting back to 7th grade when I was ganged up on, and if I'm still thinking about it in my 50s, and clearly it was traumatic. It's Mean Girls on steroids in a way. Of course, there's the, the fact that Russia's attacking our country, and that there are people who are on the payroll of the people that we spotlight in this show. So they're not authentic, but yeah, I mean,
hybrid warfare is hybrid.
It is. And
right.
they've also, they've done all those other things, including like sending cops to my house, the whole thing. Yeah. Like all of those things have been done to me over the last 18 months. Most of them not from the right wing.
Right. I just want to say, like,
think about that. Like 95% of the attacks on me have not been from the obvious fascists.
Yeah.
It's been from behind my back, from somewhere I did not originally expect.
Well, our support base would nominally go left, so they're attacking our support base of the people who would listen to what we're saying. Right.
Well,
I just know this. I just know if I sold a security company that had a 900 million IPO, I would not be out in the street fighting fascists. I would be like getting people
financing
to be elected.
People like our show to hit a wider audience. I want to say one thing. I'm sorry for their trauma and those who are caught up, just like I'm sorry for the people caught up in QAnon. I'm sorry for the churchy people whose minds have been fucked. I'm sorry for the members of our military whose minds have been fucked. But I'm truly sorry for you, Jim, and for the people who've been targeted, because the psychological battery is real. And even if we are strong and we will continue to do this work, it is still a painful thing. So
I'm not going to give them any ammunition right now. At some point, I will talk about the sorts of effects that it has on people. Yeah. Very deep, difficult, Like, you know, you are intentionally causing PTSD. That's what these people are doing. They want to make it, like, I can't look at this shit if it, like, it makes my anxiety like rocket just even to look at it. Like writing those articles, like even though I sound like you know, uppity, it's fucking hard. I don't want to look at that shit. It's fucking lies. Why would I want to look at that? Right.
Well, I'm proud of
you
because you continue to do the work, and that to me is a real testament to your character. But I will say, as HiFi has shown me many incidences of, there are people who will commit suicide over this kind of stuff. So those people who think that they're just sort of, you know, in with the kind of, you know, cool gang stalking crew who want to go after people, you know what, you're probably opening yourself up to, you know, some legal issues. So I wouldn't have so much joie de vivre, and I wouldn't be announcing on, you know, Twitter, oh my God, Operation Successful, Jim's banned, what's next? You know what? By the way, people who do that can stay the fuck out of my DMs, okay? Because, you know, you are revealing who you really are and what you really are about. And again, if you're not getting paid, then maybe you're just, you know, misguided. A nice word.
They could be compromised as well. I can think of at least one or two who are.
So what? So what? Man up. You're an adult now, you know, man up, or whatever it is that you do when you're a woman, you know, confront it, you know, take on your abusers, have some courage the way some of the women do who are going after Trump and Epstein. And speaking of which, what better segue to get into Craig Unger's interview, An American Kompromat, than with an Epstein Trump sketchy ass, you know, sexual, you know, lawsuit reference.
Compromise.
Nothing funny about that. Hey, Sean, is Craig there? Because we'd sure love to. Oh my God, there he is.
There he is.
The
Mr.
man.
Unger.
I still can't believe it.
Good to see you guys. Hi, Heidi.
I wanted to warn you, and I don't know if Sean can boost his volume. I've got my janky phone that I'm working off of, but I just wanted to warn you that you're with two gentlemen who just think you are like so metal, like you are such a hero. All our guests are amazing, but like Jim has just been like, Craig Unger is really coming on. Craig Unger is really coming on. And with that, I will just let Jim and you like have a moment.
Well, thank you. It's very flattering. You know, what can I say? But nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. They're just there aren't people who have the actual courage to say what it actually is, right? To, you know, who will take the obvious, you know, connections here and put them together in a way that tells the real story, which is of a huge, you know, KGB basically infiltration of the United States over decades. And Trump is just one small symptom. And I think for me, seeing what's happening now, it's just the natural evolution of that. And so, you know, your work and, you know, Sarah Kenzier's and some other people who have that vision, you know, has meant everything to me in order, you know, trying to sort this out. So just thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. You know, as you were talking, one of the things about all that corruption is what's amazing is how much of it is perfectly legal. And,
that's right.
And an old journalist friend of mine, I have to give him credit for saying the phrase, the real scandal is what is legal. And you see it again and again with Trump and the Russians. So there, you can do very sophisticated intelligence operations that operate completely within the law. And that happened again and again with Trump. And I think one of the great failures of the Mueller investigation is that it just left all the counterintelligence stuff aside. There it was. And a lot of it was done in ways that work within the parameters of the law. So they just left it aside.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's, again, such an important point. It's not, and not just about that, but about things like starting a cult. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to, you know, like create a you know, a radicalized fascist cult and have that be perfectly, you know, allowable. We need a whole new set of sort of laws, not only around, you know, our national security and intelligence, but around the psychological warfare components of this whole thing that we have no defense for at all, and in fact enable. So, you know.
So I want to ask a quick question. Sean, is my audio okay? Do I have to hit any buttons because I dumped out? I'm cool. You guys can hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good.
So one of the brilliant things, I love how you realize our producer, you know, has COVID and he's still here. He's so amazing. One of the things I really love about American Kompromat is that you really break things up into three very clean sections. You show Trump and all of the Russian ties and the handlers and what you can really evidence, you know, happened to him, and how and which ways he may have either been compromised or a useful idiot, or however it occurred. Then you get to the Praetorian Guard and you show the religious zealots who've been remapping our judiciary, which I think is a very incredible component of that. And then the third part of it is you show the greed and the sexual predilections of the people in Trump and Epstein and, you know, Maxwell's orbit. And that, I think, is an essential framework to understand what our country has endured in recent years and what we are still battling right now. And if you can speak on that for our audience, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Money, sex, and power. Hey.
There you go.
What more is there? No, I think it's very scary what's happening now. I mean, it's just really extraordinary. And I part of it is, I mean, what was frustrating to me about the book is I ended it saying that there's a train wreck coming. And I didn't know the specifics. I finished it in November, so I didn't know the specifics of what would happen with January 6th. But even that, we can say, I think pretty safely, is that is just the beginning. And what I'm trying to do now is really to drop back and look at what's been going on with a sense of history and where, because I think you have to look back in order to understand what's going to happen going forward. And increasingly, what I start to see, the Republican Party is almost, it's really the Confederacy 2.0. It really is in a lot of ways.
Fantastic. Yes.
And you know, it's sort of a truism every time you look at the electoral map, the red state, blue states, you look at the red states and you say, gee, that looks an awful lot like Confederate States of America. And it's true. And I think you also see that right now we're at a point where at least over 70 million people voted for him. A huge portion of them believe the big lie, which means you have tens and tens of millions of people who are living in an alternative reality with a different set of facts, and they believe them, and they're fiction.
Yes.
And to me, I guess I find that sort of mind-boggling, and I wanted to try to drill down on that a bit and trying to figure it out. I think you have to go back to the Confederacy, and when you see poor white trash then who were cannon fodder giving their lives so that rich white people could have slaves. I mean, how crazy do you have to be for that, to be in favor of that? And I think there is a lot that ties all that together.
I love how you delve into the history, and I love how you show where the infection came from, when it was led into this country by people who got out of Russia and then had to make some deal with the KGB that they would, you know, rat people out or, you know, be informants. So that was very critical. But what I really love is that you really know Manafort, and you really know Stone, and you really know Giuliani. And I think that we can't really assess Trump Russia when we don't take a really good look at those characters as well. And I would love like your bullets on each of those guys.
Right. Well, you gotta love interviewing Roger Stone is always a blast, and it gives a little insight to how how he can be so effective and such a sleazy, oily snake oil salesman. He's the guy who would, during a campaign, after the debate, will say, well, who needs to be spun? Come on. You know, he's very upfront about it. He can be, tell all these outlandish sex stories you don't know whether to believe or not. But the important thing is that he and Manafort go back with Trump more than 40 years to 1980. And Black, Manafort, and Stone was one of their agencies. They operated under several different names, but they met Donald Trump through Roy Cohn. And you can never overstate how important Roy Cohn is to all of this. I mean, yes. If you're talking about fascism, he was the ultimate fixer. He knew his way around. He was the Prince of Darkness in New York. One of my badges of honor is in the early 80s, he called me up. I was an editor at New York Magazine, and we were exposing the money laundering at Studio 54. This was a story that put the owners, Steve Rubellini and Schrager, in jail. And their lawyer was Roy Cohn, and he called me up and yelled at me, called me every kind of motherfucking thing you can imagine, and said he was going to come after me. And when the call was over, I told the editor-in-chief, we ran the story, they went to jail, nothing happened, that was it. But he is part of that, and Roger Stone, he was Trump's first fixer. He died in 1986, but Roger Stone and Manafort came from the same cloth, and they were known as their lobbying company was known as the Torturer's Lobby. Now, yes. When I got out of college 40 years ago, I remember being shocked at these highly paid lawyers who would essentially be carrying water for Big Pharma or Big Oil or whatever. But that's the way Washington worked. Well, Manafort and Stone took it a level further, and they took on as clients every dictator you can imagine, and they got big money out of it. And in the end, Manafort got the biggest dictator of them all, Vladimir Putin, and Putin put him in charge of Ukraine. That he has not been prosecuted for as an intelligence agent is just remarkable. He got something like $75 million from Putin and the Russians. He was carrying out operations that were completely in opposition to American interest and completely aligned with Putin's. He used every trick in the book to get Yanukovych elected as Putin's puppet. And has anyone read the famous text messages between his two daughters? Or I mean, they are just extraordinary. But at one point, one of them says to the other, "You know, Daddy has blood on his hands," and saying that he was responsible. That money has blood on it on his hands. Go on.
Hear me? I'm getting calls and my pager's blowing up. Can you guys still hear me okay? Yeah? Can you hear me? Two things I want to say that are bone chilling to me about what you just said. Well, one of them's not so much, but one of the real lessons from your book and from your legacy and your work is simply that what is so fucked in America is what's legal. You don't have to bribe a politician. You just need a K Street lobbyist. And I learned that from you. If you're an oligarch with some cash and you want to get a...
One of my best sources on this was an American businessman who was doing business in the early 90s, or it was, the very early 90s in Moscow. And then it was just the wild, wild West. And he was working with Russians who wanted something from Tom DeLay, who was then Speaker of the House. So the guy just wanted to give him a flat $1 million bribe. And my source said, no, go to K Street and put him in touch with one of the big lobbyists. And the Russian mobster came back and said, "Oh, you legalized bribery, how wonderful." You know, it was really the same. You just put money in it political action, a super PAC, a political action committee. You give them $1 million, they'll figure out a way of getting to it one way or another. And you see that happening again and again. One of my favorite episodes in the book, and it shows how political operations really can work like this, is Donald Trump Jr. gave a speech in Paris in October of 2016, a month before the presidential election. He was paid $50,000 to $100,000. All of that's perfectly legal. Even though the French think tank was really a front for Russian intelligence. And even though he was being given the talking points of this is what Vladimir Putin wants your father to do when he becomes president, this is what the Russians want him to do in the Middle East. And sure enough, a year later, Trump takes forces out of Syria exactly as Putin wants. So you see an awful lot of that happening again and again. And that's one thing I keep doing.
So just on that note, before Jim and HiFi chime in, I have looked at every single one of the dictators in the torturers lobby that Manafort and Stone have worked with, and they've all met terrible endings, right? They've all been disgraced. They had to flee to Moscow. They had dictator heart attacks. You know, they lost everything. They were under house arrest till they died. And I've been reassuring people throughout the last 5 years that if you look at Paul Manafort's history of who he's worked with, it's not going to have a happy ending for Donald fucking Trump, okay? It may look like it's okay, and we do have this horrible war that we're still involved in, and how he can still give propaganda speeches, I don't understand. But it's not going to have a happy ending for this guy if you look at Manafort's clients and you draw that map.
Well, I hope you're right. You know, there was an interesting column this week by Marcy Wheeler, Empty Wheel. She's a blogger who's a lawyer in Washington. And it was the first optimistic thing I'd read in terms of the feds really prosecuting the higher ups for January 6th. And she had good information that suggested Rudy Giuliani, Roger Stone, Alex Jones, the woman lawyer Trump has. Why am I blanking?
Sidney Powell.
Sidney Powell, and a couple of others that the justice, that Merrick Garland really is going after them. And we'll see. I don't know. I mean, obviously, getting inside a grand jury is something I do.
So I wanted to, speaking of going after the people at the top, I wanted to ask you about Lieutenant General retired Michael T. Flynn, who, in my opinion, is the worst traitor in American history, just because of the level of treason and aggressive actions that he has taken to harm America. Flynn is the guy who directed Pizzagate, directed a bunch of the ops that basically flipped the 2016 election, and he's been, you know, for the last 5 years, especially after he got Sidney Powell and got out from under the Justice Department, you know, has been going crazy, creating this enormous fascist cult. He tried to steal the 2020 election and help direct the insurrection. And now he's out there, has been a year continuing to build this cult, going out to all these rallies, collecting all of these people, brainwashing them over and over and over again. Anyway, I'm just curious, you know, because obviously there are connections with Manafort, obviously connections with Stone, and others. What about Flynn? And then I also want to get to Eric Prince and Steve Bannon, because I think they're important elements here too.
Right. No, they're all important. It's just, you know what? The honest truth is there are just too damn many of them for me to focus on all of them. And I sort of know, obviously, about Flynn, what's been out there. but I haven't been as fixated on doing such a deep dive on him. Partly because it's just where my books take me. I'm following one narrative thread after another, and at a certain point, there's just too much in this.
There really is.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the scope of the
Flynn
work
he's a slippery one. That's the problem. Is he's a PSYOPs expert. He ran the DIA. He knows how to do stuff, and so it's been challenging to sort of figure out how all these things connect with him. What about Eric Prince? Has that guy come up? Did that? What's his? Because he obviously, Prince, Bannon, Flynn, Nader, they were all in the White House in 2016, conspiring with each other.
Right. I mean, again, I know sort of what's been out there, but I don't have anything special. It's not like I've covered them in great depth the way I've other people.
So one of the things that we were talking about earlier is Opus Dei, right? So Eric Prince, comes from a Dominionist evangelical family, but for some reason in 1992 converted to Catholicism and immediately became a Knight of Malta, which is, basically a sort of, ugly sister organization to Opus Dei, which is still executing the Crusades. So that part of the reason why I think Eric Prince is interesting is because he ties into this whole sort of theocratic, fascist, dominionist, wave that's been taking over.
Right. I mean, to me, the great importance of Opus Dei was the way they've really done this powerful operation to take over the judiciary. It's just been extraordinary. And if you look at the power of someone like Leonard Leo, who is close to Opus Dei, but also obviously there was William Barr and so many others. And it's very weird. I mean, Barr's chief speechwriter, who I did interview, was Father John Paul Woke, who was a Harvard graduate. He was chief speechwriter for Barr when Barr was Attorney General the first time under Bush Sr. And it happened that his brother-in-law was the great spy Robert. How can I blank on his name?
Hansen. Robert Hansen.
Robert Hansen. Yes. So I mean, you have this very weird coming together of an incredible group of people.
Well, look, I don't have anything against Catholics, but we have 6 of them on the Supreme Court, which seems weird to me. And 5 of them are, the most extreme version. And they were also basically all walked into the court by by Leonard Leo, who was on the board of the Catholic Information Center, which was Opus Dei's K Street, lobbying shop.
Right.
Which, by the way, also connects to Peter Thiel through the guy who ran Opus Dei and ran the Catholic Information Center for a long time. That guy was a lifelong friend of Peter Thiel, who anyone who's followed me knows that that's another guy that I think is highly responsible for a lot of this and has allied with people like Putin.
Well, I will say about Craig's legacy, because so many of the characters that we're talking about are people who are involved in this particular aspect of the war that we are dealing with now, the influence war in the last few years. But what's so useful about Craig's legacy is he shows the 40, 50-year big picture GOP plan and how they have led us to this precipice. And maybe you can talk on that a little bit, Craig.
Right. It's sort of easier to see in retrospect, but I guess about 20 years ago, if I'd started out and saying, I want to do 5 books on the Republican Party's War Against Democracy, I suspect I wouldn't have gotten the 5-book contract anywhere. But one at a time, effectively, that's what I've been doing from the starting with House of Bush, House of Saud, the fall of the House of Bush, Boss Rove, and so forth. And what you see is again and again and again, and I'm going to continue in this vein with yet another book, but that I think Trump is a great anomaly in the sense that he's so spectacularly vulgar. His narcissism is just off the charts in terms of what's normal. But in fact, the Republican Party has had all this kind of, been doing this war against democracy for quite some time. And if you go back to 1968, 1980, again and again, you will see Republican Party meeting with foreign powers to interfere with American foreign policy in order to sabotage an election. That happened in 1968 with Nixon. It's not well known, but now it's very well documented, and I've actually listened to the tapes online because they were all part of Lyndon Johnson's archives. But
yes,
Nixon made a deal with Anna Chennault, who was a Republican operative. Lyndon Johnson at the time was doing the Vietnam peace talks, and Nixon got Anna Chennault to sabotage them and to get the South Vietnamese to withdraw at the very last minute, and sure enough, that turned the election to Nixon's favor. You can see it again in 1980 with the October surprise, which I'll be writing about. You see it again in 2000. There was Bush v. Gore. Well, in 1972, of course, there was Watergate. That was not. That was purely domestic. In 2000, you had Bush v. Gore, and even in 2004, the entire election, the outcome depended on one state, Ohio. And there was so much chicanery going on in Ohio, and I document that in my book, Boss Rove. So this has been happening again and again and again, and I think it's time we woke up and said, "You're not playing by the rules," you know.
Yes,
So
and you also.
Go ahead, Heidi.
No, you please, HiFi.
All right. Here we go. I got two names I want to ask you about. And the first one is, you said you were talking about the October surprise in Reagan. Did the name Jack Singlaub pop up with regards to Iran-Contra and the Iranian hostage situation, things like that?
You know, I know the name, but I think is he an arms dealer or what's
no?
He
was the founder of the CIA. He was head of the OSS and a founder of the CIA way back. He's now 100 years old, literally, still alive.
He's still with us,
on Mike Flynn's board of directors.
Yeah, and he's pushing QAnon now. So it seems like an interesting road.
Thank you. Well, that's something I may follow up on. Sounds great.
Yeah, Jack Singlaub's a good one. Here's another name for you that I personally am very, very interested in. Have you ever heard the name Sergei Grishin? Has that name come up for you at all?
Grishin,
Grishin, Sergei Grishin. Here's why Sergei Grishin is interesting to me. I found a video of him on YouTube. He submitted a video to Donald Trump admitting that he stole $60 billion from the State Bank of Russia, right? And then he goes to Silicon Valley, sets up with an Israeli named Dovi Francis, and also works with an American named Joseph Lonsdale, who, amongst other things, was accused of sexual impropriety in court, but is also a good friend of Peter Thiel's, and they started Palantir. And I noticed in your book, American Kompromat, you talked about Promise and Inslaw. It seems to me, if you look at Promise Inslaw, you look at the Kochs doing Themis, and then you look at Peter Thiel doing Palantir, they all kind of seem related. And the fact that there's this Russian thief in the mix freaks me out a little bit. That's just me, though.
Well, it's also just full disclosure. The same Russian thief he speaks of knocked HiFi off of Twitter when he started exposing the transnational mob behind the Kyle Rittenhouse fundraiser and Give, Send, Go, which will be an embarrassment of riches for you when you start looking into that. So those are names on my guys' radar because they have been following the money of the recent mindfuckery that we're enduring.
Yes.
Right. I mean, the interesting thing about Promise and linking it to Trump, to me, is through Maxwell and through the father, Robert Maxwell. And, and one is he was quite close to the KGB back then. He really was very, very close. But two is this Israeli, sort of renegade Israeli agent, Ari Ben-Menashe, who I've interviewed at length, worked with Maxwell, and he was saying that Maxwell was selling the Promise software and all that. And it had been stolen from Inslaw, the company they created. They leased it to the Justice Department, then it was stolen, and they've been suing for it for, I don't know, 30 years or so.
Yeah, very long time.
So with the few minutes we have left here, I have an agenda.
I got one follow up on that. I got one follow-up.
Okay, let me ask mine and you ask yours. All right. Or you have a follow up now? You want to ask it now?
Well, it has to do with Epstein, the billionaire dinners at Edge Foundation, Yuri Milner, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, how much Russian investment do you see in Silicon Valley, specifically in social media?
All right, I can't drill down that far, but I think there's a huge number of Russians involved in Silicon Valley, and it's very dangerous. Yeah. And I had long talks with Yuri Shvitz about this, who was KGB major and was my source, and they're everywhere. And you see that a lot. You saw it a lot in the Epstein operation, and not enough people, to me, have picked up on all of this because one of the women, this woman who was Epstein's publicist, Masha Krakova, was, when she was in Russia, she was the head of Nazi, which was sort of the Putin equivalent of Hitler Youth. And she was there's a movie called Putin's Kiss, and it's starring her because she was the recipient of Putin's Kiss. And she ends up as Epstein's publicist, and she's a big angel investor in Silicon Valley now. And there were other people in the Epstein operation who were also powerful. One was Svetlana, who ended up putting together some money, and it was Epstein money that she funneled into Harvard and MIT in the tech world for him to use his influence. So I think he was a good vehicle through which Russia could get into our tech sector.
Yes, thank you so much for that, HiFi. Thank you for that, Craig. I often think about the Vexelberg money at MIT, and everything that you're just talking about is the reality that we're living through right now. So thank you. I want to just take a quick look at how you were heavily involved in New York media when Trump's rise was occurring. And I just want you to tell our viewers something about why and how the ball got dropped on accountability for Trump from your very special perspective of having been there, watching kind of the cheesy tawdriness of it infect the...
Right. I was first at New York Magazine and then Vanity Fair, and we saw a lot of Trump in both places. And I couldn't stand it. I hated the way he was being covered. I mean, the New York Magazine, well, both magazines really had a way about writing about the rich that may have seemed critical, but most of them, especially Donald Trump, loved it. He loved the way he was being covered. He just wanted all the headlines and all that. And I mean, it's sort of obvious because Tony Schwartz was writing about him for New York Magazine and got a huge advance to ghostwrite The Art of the Deal, from which he made huge amounts of money. So he was Trump's ally. Let's be honest, okay? And from my point of view, Trump was
he created a fictional character.
Yeah, and he was some kind of silly, vulgar, greedy real estate developer, playboy, a latter-day incarnation of Hugh Hefner, and all that. And the gossip columnist ate it up, and he knew how to manipulate that very, very well. You know, I knew some of the gossip columnists; they loved it, getting calls from him. But it was just you know that's one thing I think people don't understand about reporters is a lot of reporters are just whores. I mean, you get a good if Donald Trump calls you, I'm going to type it up and run with it, and I got a front page story. It's as simple as that. I mean, it really is, and it means you're a star if Donald Trump is calling you. It also, to me, it means you're carrying water for him. You know, there used to be a wonderful website called Media Whores Online, and its focus, this was its focus, and it's true. You don't. I think people aren't aware unless you're a reporter yourself. Your source is more important to your income, your bottom line, than whether you're getting your money from Vanity Fair, the New York Times, or whomever. Because if you're plugged in with Donald Trump, you're going to be rich. I'm not plugged in with Donald Trump.
Well, I am so grateful for the work that you do and the work of Wayne Barrett and the work of the people who, you know, are still out there. This team, for example, which is trying very hard to, you know, always follow the money and expose what we can. But, you know, if we had had more of a jaundiced eye in 2015, 2016, you know, there might have still been a chance of him not. I mean, that was Putin's big coup. So 2 things really quick. You had a great line in the Byline Times interview that you did with me where you basically spelled out, you know, people are still having a difficult time wrapping their head around the fact that a Russian asset was in the White House. That's part 1. Part 2, you said, if we do not see this guy prosecuted, we are situation normal, all fucked up, possibly in perpetuity. Can you kind of jar the casual viewer toward reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons I said it called the Republican Party the Confederacy 2.0, because we didn't, you know, there's a really interesting book out there called Learning from the Germans by a woman named Susan Neiman, and she's American Jewish living in Berlin. And having been to Germany myself, it's true. Germany accepts responsibility for its crimes. It says, here are concentration camps. We committed genocide. We committed these atrocities. And the former president of Germany said, if you truly love Germany, you can only love it with a broken heart. America does not acknowledge reality. We say simultaneously, all men are created equal, but we got some slaves over here. And the Civil War did not end that. It seemed to end it, but the Confederacy was not crushed, not in the way Hitler was really crushed. Nazism was crushed. Germany was defeated. The Confederacy.
Yeah, they let them keep their flag around forever, right?
Well, well 5 days later. 5 days later, 5 days later, they assassinated Lincoln. So Reconstruction was undermined. And yes, the flag in Mississippi and all those other states, can you imagine in Germany seeing Nazi swastikas everywhere? No. I believe slavery should be treated like the Holocaust. I mean, it was a crime against humanity. And it has to be crushed, and it has not been crushed. And through my lifetime, I realized, you know, when I was 13, my father took me to Germany. I went to Dachau and saw the concentration camps. I came back to a Texas history trip. So they took us to the Alamo, and we cheered for Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was a slave owner. The Alamo was, Texas was then a Mexican state. Mexico had just abolished slavery. The fight for the Alamo, defending the Alamo, was defending slavery. But I didn't know that. I had my little Davy Crockett t-shirt. America has been brainwashed along that lines, and we've not accepted reality. And when I say Trump has to be convicted, that's what I mean. That is one measure of accepting that reality.
Yeah, we can't.
Wow, thank you.
An exceptional country, right, would not put Donald Trump in the presidency. You know,
right.
The myth of that we're somehow different from everyone and that, you know, we've never done anything wrong. I totally agree with you. It's not anti-patriotic to say that we have fucked up and that we have hurt millions of people and that we have, you know, done horrible atrocities. It is the core of humanity and empathy to acknowledge your mistakes. And I feel like our country is not an empathetic country right now.
I forgot who said this, but the quote is something about the populace gets the politicians they deserve. You know,
I didn't ask for this, man.
Well, I think what's beautiful about Craig's work and his legacy, and particularly, you know, just American Kompromat's just very fresh on my mind, is that with incredibly, you know, detailed documentation, you show what happened to Trump and how this fake rich guy was propped up and how his apartments were owned through shell companies by Russian mobsters and who likely his handler was and where he bought his electronics, you know, incredible documentation. So I challenge anybody who still believes that this Russia thing is a myth. Pick up Craig Unger's book, listen to it on Audible if it's difficult for you to read many pages. Give it a listen and then report back, because that is the precipice we're at. And the final thing that I'd like to get from you, if the gentlemen don't mind, is what is your forecast for 2022 as we go toward November, and what can we do to try to ensure that our democracy sees itself through the end of this year and onward?
Well, I think it's very scary, and I mean, I can't make predictions about electoral results, except I think Trump is obviously going to at least try to run, and I think, I mean, that's yet another reason why it's so important to prosecute him and discredit him and have all those people should be in jail. I think it's pretty clear by now that January 6th was a tryout. It was a dry run. It was a way of seeing where are the weak points. And what we see, I think, is that people like Brian Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, and Mike Pence did not bow to Trump. But the Trumpster is going to make sure those guys are not there next time around.
Yeah.
And this is very, very difficult because I don't have any clout in Georgia in determining who the Secretary of State of Georgia is, or similar jobs all around the country. But you can be bet in those swing states, the Russians are going to be gunning for those positions. These are positions that most of us regard as merely ministerial, in the sense that Mike Pence was merely supposed to add up the electoral votes. He wasn't supposed to say, well, I don't like Arizona's or whatever. And they're going to politicize and weaponize each of those local ministerial positions and put in their own people. And, this is one thing I wrote about it when I was writing about Boss Rove, is you had to see the way he took over the court system in Texas and Alabama and the state legislatures in those states and other states as well. And it happened in Ohio. And this is, they control the machinery that will resolve the elections. And it's very scary that they're going to be doing that in states. And, we have to fight for that. And I suspect it's going to go on much long past 2024. But
I kind of think we have until 2022. Like, if they get the midterms, we're in trouble.
Well, I thank you so much for all your work and for all your insights. And I just encourage people to support real investigative journalism by buying these books and reading them. My son, at the beginning of the year, got off of all of his social media. He's read 5 books since the beginning of January. He no longer has anxiety. I bring that up because, readers to me are interesting people. And just a quick footnote here, and it's really not a footnote, it's kind of the main event. HiFi was knocked off of Twitter by a Russian gangster, and that's real, and we have documentation. Jim has been now banned off Twitter 3 times. Both of them are very great at putting together the big picture networks of what's really going on. And I find it to be very interesting that voices that actually go after telling the truth behind what we're seeing with the Russian and domestic radicalization and interference are being silenced, as CNP funded people and organizations are really targeting our voting systems. So that's the reality of where we're at. Truth tellers being silenced, lots of big money behind, trying to suppress the vote and put people in place in positions of power to sway the vote. And what you already know, Craig, is that lying is the message, right? If you confuse enough people, they're demoralized, they don't know which way to go. And, maybe one final word, since Trump is your area of expertise, in case there might be one person out there who we can get through to who might be a member of the cult. Is there anything that you can say, that just one good zinger line about warning about Trump and the pending autocracy? It
really is. I'm old enough that I grew up. My favorite movie in high school was A Manchurian Candidate, but it was regarded as so beyond the pale that I found it very. It's just mind-boggling that you could have a man elected president who is actually recruited and cultivated as a Russian asset. And we have to sort of drill down and understand what that means and realize that we are living in a completely different world where we have this huge defense with $1 trillion defense with missiles and so forth. Man, a few Twitter feeds and just a few $1 million, they've done spectacular damage, much more so. So yeah, we have to really fight this stuff.
Asymmetrical warfare over the internet is what they're doing, right?
Thank absolutely. You. Yes, and thank you so much for that, Craig, because there was a period in 2018 that I wrote about where I was waking up screaming like the Manchurian Candidate because of the attacks that were happening on me. And I think that's a great essential framework for the reality TV crowd. Watch a film called The Manchurian Candidate. See if you can draw some parallels. Oh my gosh, Craig Unger, we've had nothing but metal guests. And as Jim would say, you are so metal.
Okay, well, thank you. Nice to meet you guys, and good to see you, Heidi.
Oh, so great to see you as well.
Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Show the book one more time. Love this book. Good book. Read it. Ooh, look,
wow.
you tell it like that, you can actually get it.
I just want to point something out.
You guys forgot about P tapes.
Chris Vickery and Craig Unger on this show, and I feel very grateful. It's a testament to the work you guys do, and it's a testament to the community that we've built. So thank you, Chris and Brent and Craig, for being here with us today. We really needed that. And now we have Sean Connor's Digital Dissent.
I was just looking at your rundown here, Heidi. It's hilarious. You put sex pounding.
What? No. Wait. That's a different podcast. Podcast. Not this podcast. Wrong podcast, folks. Right.
I guess it kind of.
We on YouTube or Pornhub. So
it's close. Yeah. No. This is a little cut up I did of the Putin or not Putin. Jesus, the Palin. The Palin.
Palin.
Yeah. the Palin interview, which I always find her fascinating that the Republican Party still like backs her. I mean, didn't she ruin their chances? I mean, she was what, Alaska? She was a mayor and then governor for 3 years and then nothing. She basically screwed that whole. I mean, anyway, it's crazy.
We got to bring the old players back, right?
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
So this is my interpretation of that interview.
It amazes me, though, her and other liberals, socialists even, always pound sex. Their ability to pound and sex. Yeah, okay, take this issue, though, with her suggestion of dating and attraction to someone. Yeah, okay, pound that, who is attracted to who? What people do in the privacy of their own bedrooms. The liberals, not the conservatives, are the one who pound and sex. And obviously that is so necessary in order to sex.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Being liberal gets you laid.
I do want to say that the freakiest guy I ever knew was a neocon. So, I think Palin might have missed the mark.
No, all right, guys, that's what I got. I'm going to go get some sleep.
Oh, my God. Sean Connor, thank you for
You're the best,
producing
man.
this show despite COVID.
Look at the spike protein coming out of his lower lip.
I know, it's like a lip piercing, right? It's
No, you know what's great? You know who's so metal? Sean Connor.
Sorry, guys. I'm out. See y'all later.
Bye,
All right.
later.
I love you guys. Great show.